John Wick is the kind of franchise that rises far above modern action movies.
What have you done?
Each sequel seems to somehow top the last in terms of stunt coordination and creativity. What drives the action are of course the characters in them and the deep mythology of the world that John lives in, but there's been something the sequels have started doing that the first movie didn't, and with a little bit of thought it's easy to see why. And where the series is heading for an end. To see this, we need to look at the body count of prominent named characters. In the first John Wick, who's left alive? John, Winston, Sharon, John Leguizamo's character who I forgot the name of, pretty much everyone on John's side. All of the antagonists, directly or indirectly, to John are dead by the end of the movie. The main villain Vigo dies, his son, his bodyguard, the female assassin who breaks continental rules, and the several score of goons John breezes through like butter. It's a definitive end to a movie, ending on the same pier that him and Helen shared their last date. In Chapter 2, John's antagonists are Santonio, his sister Cassius, played by Common, Ares, played by Ruby Rose, and in the opening scene, Vigo's brother gets his henchmen wiped out as John steals back his car. Of all these villains, who actually dies by the end of the movie? Santonio, his sister, and since they're all assassins, about a quarter of the population of New York. Santonio's sister isn't even so much a villain as she is a supporting character who ends her own life, so the only actual villain who John kills is Santonio. John stabs Cassius through the chest, but since they were allies and have history and respect for each other, he allows him to live as a professional courtesy. It's a double-edged courtesy, considering if Cassius removed the knife from his chest, he'd just soon die. So he simply stays in the train car as John gets off, sneering into the camera. Beaten, but very much alive. John and Ares have a brutal fistfight, but once she's incapacitated, they exchange some one-liners and then he walks off. But if you take notice, she doesn't actually die in her final scene. The character of John never leaves even the slightest chance of one of his enemies leaving after his fight, unless he allows them to live. Every single goon he faces, he executes. Brutally if he has to. So much so that even if he double taps someone in the back of the head, he'll even shoot them a third time in the head at a slightly different angle, just to make sure that they are 110% dead. It's to the point where it's a psychological obsession for the character, similar to people with OCD. That's a massive topic to be explored in and of itself, but the point is, John would never leave an opponent of his just sitting there, head bobbing and in pain, unless it was with purpose. Based on their interplay in the movie, these two characters clearly revere each other, and if John really wanted to end her life, he absolutely would have. But he doesn't. His snide remark of, sure, when she says she'll be seeing him, isn't because she'll be dead, but because she'll never have the gall to face him after being defeated like she was. She was humiliated and barely breathing by the end of it. And finally, the opening scene. Much like the fight with Ares later on in the film, John completely humiliates Vigo's brother by wiping the floor with his men, showing up in his office, and foregoing something of an unwritten peace treaty between them. Vigo's brother agrees out of pure fear. Notice how all of the harm that came to him in the movie was financial, not physical. John wrecked his entire shop and murdered most, if not all of his workers. The amount of cleanup, reconstruction, rehiring, and restocking all of the lost inventory is astronomical, even for an underground mob boss like himself. It's probably more money than a lot of people will ever see in their lifetime. John Wick Chapter 2 leaves us with three separate people, played by three relatively big-name actors, who not only survive past the end of the movie, but are left immensely scorned by John as he completely overpowers them, overthrows them, physically, mentally, and financially, to achieve his goals. And finally, this leaves us with Chapter John 3 Wick Parabellum. Of course, with this one's story revolving around John running for his life from the high table, this one has the largest collection of villains to date. Zero, the Adjudicator, Barada, the Elder, the massive dude that John kills with a book, and in a surprise twist, Winston himself betrays John to appease the high table and vindicate himself for helping John in Chapter 2.
Oh, he has to die.
Winston and the Adjudicator are left alive, as John plots with the Bowery King to take down the high table in a Chapter 4 that doesn't exist yet. The Elder not only doesn't die, but is completely unaffected by what John does in the movie, with John being the one who has to lose a finger in order to appease him. John's ally Sophia almost shoots Barada for trying to kill her dog, but it's John who stops her from doing this, and she wounds him in the leg instead. Barada's still alive and severely scorned by Sophia, and by extension, John himself. Finally, the fight was Zero. John kills his two goons, along with pretty much the rest of his goons earlier, but just like clockwork, John incapacitates Zero with a stab through the chest before the two share a casual conversation.
That was a pretty good fight, huh?
John, once again, leaves him to die. But since the scene is so incredibly similar to the way he fought and beat Cassius, and since Zero never removes the gigantic blade from his chest, we can clearly piece together that this is the same tactic John used on Cassius. Zero knows that if he removes that blade from his chest, he'll die, and so the fight is over. What we have here is a collection of characters from all 3 chapters who oppose John in some way and have every reason in the world to hunt him down and kill him, juxtaposed with John and the Bowery King plotting to overthrow the entirety of the High Table in the very last scene of the last movie. Over the course of this trilogy so far, about one man's very, very bad weekend, John's made 8 new enemies and counting. Zero, Cassius, Ares, Barada, Vigo's brother Abram, Winston, the Adjudicator, the Elder, and whoever else sits on the High Table John's currently planning to overthrow. Once realizing John is still alive, all 8 of these people have incredibly strong reasons to make absolutely sure that John Wick dies once and for all. His mere presence has caused 3 movies worth of problems for everyone involved, multiple times. Here's the biggest catch. All 8 of these people have ties to the High Table. Once John resurfaces, all the Adjudicator or the Elder or even Winston has to do is make a couple of phone calls, and on the promise of finally killing John Wick, suddenly the High Table has the greatest, most lethal task force hell-bent on killing John for 8 separate reasons. This group of people has connections to every level of the criminal underworld, large and small, and since most of these people individually almost killed John at least once, together, this group would be an unstoppable force even for a man like John Wick to endure. The writers and directors of the John Wick franchise have sown the seeds for a sort of reverse Avengers, with John and all of his Bowery connections going head-to-head with every scorned, humiliated adversary he's let walk away.
The last thing either one of us needs is Mr. Wick paying us a visit in the night. For both our sakes, I'll hope you see to it that this situation is taken care of, yes?
Absolutely.
The premise is dripping with story potential, and since this format could never be topped, it would serve as the absolute perfect finale to one of the greatest modern film franchises.
Jonathan, just walk away.
Yeah, Jonathan. Walk away.
What have you done? Jonathan, just